Film is back. Or better, film never really left in the first place. For some people it might be silly to forego all modern technology and use something that's older than a lot of us. But there are many reasons why shooting on film is incredibly rewarding and fun, a great challenge, and the preferred medium for some. Me, for example. And just like vintage cars have a certain charm, and listening to your favorite musician on vinyl has a special quality to it, using film instead of digital can give you that intangible good feeling of doing something manual. So if you're at that point and you do want to try it out, here's everything you need to know to get started. Start with a camera. A lot of people didn't switch from film to digital until the mid-2000s. So think about the fact that most photos you've seen from before that time were shot on film. And you might think that film cameras are somewhat rare, but lots of families around the world had access to easy-to-use consumer cameras, and I'd encourage you to ask your parents and grandparents what camera they had. And maybe they even still have it in the attic. People have basically always been passionate about their cameras, and it's been really nice to hear my family stories about their cameras. So you can imagine now that there are millions of great quality used cameras floating around. And if you'd like to get some expert opinions on what might be the right fit for you, or if you're nervous about the condition of a camera, you can check out the B&H used department and chat with our experts about what you're looking for in a camera. Some manufacturers have even started making 35mm cameras again, and I think there are some great options to check out. This, for example, is the new Pentax 17, and it's designed specifically for beginners. Here are some tips for choosing your first film camera. Find a mechanical camera and a 50mm lens. There's a whole generation of cameras from the 60s to the 80s that are affordable and reliable. Try to find one with a light meter, but don't worry too much about it because you can also use an app on your phone to help you with your settings. And it's totally fine to start out with a point-and-shoot camera. They're fun and affordable. But if you do want to dive in deeper, I'd recommend that you check out the exposure triangle and maybe even read your camera's manual to learn about how to change your settings. The next thing to do is to choose your film. Start with basic regular film, like Kodak Gold 200 or Fujifilm 400. There are lots of experimental films out there, but don't overcomplicate things when starting out. We've got a whole film counter at the store, and we also have a fully stocked online store. Next, you have to load your film into your camera. And to do that, you just have to pop open the back. Then you put your film in, load it up onto the spool. All right, you gotta advance a few frames. You gotta make sure it really catches. Close it back up. Now you're ready to shoot your roll. You gotta figure out your focusing system. This camera, for example, has a focusing ring, but there are also rangefinders, and point-and-shoot cameras, for example, have autofocus. Get a wide variety of lighting situations and try to push your camera. Get creative with shutter speeds, low light, bright sunlight, portraits, plants, and other subjects. And make sure that you never open the camera back while you have a film in there. And also, don't leave it anywhere too hot. And when your roll is done, you have to rewind the film and unload it. Then you have to find a lab to develop your film. You can send your film off or drop it off in person if you're lucky enough to have a lab in your town. After a few days, you will receive digital files, usually JPEGs, of your images, and it's always a good idea to request your negatives as well, since that will make it easier to store them or rescan them later if you end up needing a higher resolution, for print for example. You can actually edit your files a little bit as well. I usually like to adjust the exposure, black point, and the white balance. And if your images don't turn out how you expect, don't worry too much and don't give up. There's a ton of trial and error in the beginning. Sometimes your camera is faulty, sometimes your film is damaged, and sometimes you might just need to practice a bit. It's a really good practice in the beginning to shoot one roll at a time, get it developed, and troubleshoot if you run into any issues. And there you go, you successfully entered into the world of film photography. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about one of my favorite topics today. Film is a wonderful and versatile medium and such a fun skill to learn. I hope you learned something today or found a new spark of inspiration. What other questions do you have about starting your journey into film photography? Let me know in the comments below.